Hi, I'm Andy Shalal. I'm the owner of Busboys and Poets. We are so happy to have Rock Newman and the Rock Newman Show join our tribe here. We are a tribe. This is a place where racial and cultural connections are consciously uplifted, a place where art, culture, and politics intentionally collide. This is a space to take a deliberate pause and feed your mind, body, and soul. We believe by creating such a space, we can actually change our community, change DC, and change the world for the better. And now, the Rock Newman Show.
Good morning. This is Saturday, October the 19th, 2013. This is the Rock Newman Show. We are broadcasting live from the Langston Hughes Room at Busboys and Poets, 14th and V Street, Northwest Washington, D.C. We invite you to come on down. We've got 3 action-packed hours, 3 multiple great guests for today's show. So you can join us here for breakfast and some great conversation. I'm going to read you this outstanding lineup that the team has put together today. And we've got a lot of to talk about, a lot of subjects to deal with. And we certainly invite you to come on down, have breakfast with us, and join us for some great conversation. In the first hour, on this week, earlier, I forget it was Tuesday or Wednesday, there was an announcement made by our former Attorney General Doug Gansler, who is running to become the next governor of the state of Maryland. Well, everybody that's running needs a running mate who they feel as if will be the person that will best help them win and best help them to govern for all of the people of the state of Maryland. And my first guest, Delegate Jolene Ivey, she was selected by Doug Gansler. She's someone I met quite some time ago, and we'll tell you about those circumstances when we get into the show. In the second hour is a woman that when you look around and see your privileges and your right to vote, when you look at so many of the freedoms that you have today, some of those freedoms can be traced back to the work of a legal scholar, someone who has been in the trenches fighting for civil rights of all people for a very, very long time. Her name is Barbara Arnwine. And for those of you who might not recognize the name, might not recognize her photo on our website, I would encourage you, if you have a minute when we go to a break, of course, don't stop watching while you're looking at our program, but when there is a break, look up the name Barbara Arnwine, and I'll tell you, you'll be incredibly impressed, and we are blessed to have her on the show today. She's president and executive director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law and has had such an impact on civil rights and the right to vote in this country. Her impact spans back now nearly 30 years. She is one incredible woman, and we're excited to be able to have her. Then a name that needs no real introduction, you just say Jesse. Reverend Jesse Jackson has really embraced and put his shoulder to the wheel behind the effort to have Washington's professional football team to get rid of its nickname that so many have found to, in this day of the time of enlightenment, to be just a thing that should be thrown in the dustbin. Reverend Jackson has some plans. I don't know all of the particulars, and that's why we're having him on. But I understand that he is in some way involved in a protest that's going to happen at FedEx Field on Sunday. And I don't want to get off too much on that, but there is a growing tide that is crashing to the shore that is saying to the owner of the Washington Redskins, Daniel Snyder, change your ways. That this is something, again, a name that is long past. It is a name that should be just gotten rid of. In a real simple layman's language, you know, it's time It's a time of enlighten. It's a time to act enlightened. The name is a racist slur that should no longer be tolerated by those of us who have sensitivity towards not offending so many. And in the third hour, we have Kelly Jackson Williams, the actress of the sitcom Family Matters, Urkel's girlfriend. Lord, she just made Urkel suffer for so very long. And Kelly, they had a 10-year run on that program. That was quite a great program, many interesting messages. And Laura, Kelly Williams Jackson will be our guest in the 11 o'clock hour. But without any further ado, let me come back to our guest in the studio here at the Langston Hughes Room at Busboys and Poets, Jolene Ivey. Thank you so very much for coming on the Rock Newman Show.
Thanks, Rock. It's really great to be here.
We are happy to have you. And, you know, your work has obviously paid off, and it has impressed people in high places. There were approximately 17 gazillion million other politicians in the state of Maryland who would have loved to have been bestowed the honor of being a running mate for someone who is given a legitimate shot at becoming the next governor. First, congratulations, and how did it make you feel when you got the call to say you were going to be the one?
Well, you know, it's a funny thing. First, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And I'd been talking to Doug Gansler for many months off and on about this issue, and it came to me that, yeah, this would be a great opportunity to be able to do a lot of things with him to make our state better. So it was certainly something that was appealing. But when the time actually came and he actually said, you know, you're the one I want, instead of me feeling celebratory, I felt like I had a really, really big test to study for it. I had to get ready. So he told me that was a good way to feel.
Yeah.
And I think although I'm happy and I'm celebrating, I'm really trying to really work hard to do everything we need to do in order to win so that we can fulfill all the things we want to do.
Okay. Let me ask you this, and I certainly want to go back because I like my listening and viewing audience to know who my guests are, not just sort of what they're doing now. So I definitely want to go back and get some biographical stuff. But, you know, in just reading a little bit about your history, about where you are now, one of the things that struck me, and I want to put it in context this way. My wife and I, after nearly 30 years of marriage, as a matter of fact, we celebrate our 30th anniversary this Tuesday.
Congratulations.
This Tuesday, October the 22nd. 30 years, congratulations.
Excellent.
She deserves the greatest honor of all for putting up with me for these 30 years. But for our first time in our 30-year marriage, a month ago, we got a little puppy. And we've absolutely fallen in love with the puppy. But it's like the little puppy sucks up all the air in the room.
Right.
I looked, and you have 5 boys.
Yes, indeed.
So how in the world does somebody with 5 boys ever get out of the house, let alone being a delegate and competent to the point and accomplished enough to the point that they're selected to be the running mate to be lieutenant governor for the state of Maryland?
You know what really makes a difference? 2 things. Number one, I have a great husband, Glenn Ivey. He's been extremely supportive. He's with me all the way, and we're great partners, especially when it comes to raising our 5 boys. And the other thing is that we have 5 really great boys. One of them is here with me today, Julian. He's our actor. He's the one who did Lion King on Broadway.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Julian in the house.
That's right.
At
Julian's
Busboys
here,
and Poets.
and he's helping out right now in the campaign, which is great. So the boys are just so good and helpful and enthusiastic. Now, not that they're not boys. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. We all know what boys do.
And boys will be boys.
Our boys do all those things that boys do. And, you know, one day I'm going to go gray. I don't know when it's going to happen. I think I saw one. And when it happens, I'm going to dye my hair. I'm not going to lie about it.
So you're not going that route.
I'm not, but it hasn't happened
yet. You're
yet.
not going down easily.
I'm not without a fight.
I hear you. Okay, so in the spirit of my audience understanding who you are. Let's go back. Let's go all the way back. I'd like to know where you were born, where you grew up, where you went to elementary school. Let's start with those three things.
Oh, boy.
Yes,
Well,
let's go all the way back.
Well, my dad was in the military. He was he was a Buffalo soldier.
Okay.
So he was in World War II and the Korean War. So that was 20 years. And then he became a public school teacher in Prince George's County Public Schools for the next 20 years.
Oh, wow. Where did he teach?
He taught at Douglas in South County, and then he taught at High Point, which was my alma mater in Beltsville.
Okay.
So he
Okay.
taught at Douglas when we had segregation, because, of course, all the black kids, all the black teachers were there.
Sure.
And then when they desegregated, they sent a few black teachers to other schools. So that's when he got moved to High Point.
Okay.
Yeah, but in
Okay.
any event, he and my mom were married in the 50s. Now, my mom, my mom is white, and of course, my dad's black.
Right.
And it was illegal at that time for them to be married in Maryland or Virginia. So in this area, they had to live in D.C. because D.C. was the one place where they could be legally wed. So we lived in Northeast D.C. Lived on.
Let me just stop you there because, I try to take those moments for my audience that, that stuff doesn't just float by. It's like, wow, wait a minute. There are certain posts
Right.
that we can latch on to. Did you hear what she said? In the 50s, as early back as the 50s.
Heck, it was the 60s and it was still illegal.
Still illegal.
I think it was 66 before the law
Maryland
changed.
and Virginia. So they actually, for them to be married and to reside in Maryland and Virginia, your mom and dad, dad who's black and the white mother who's white, they had to live in the District of Columbia.
They didn't have any choice because, the Lovings, the couple that changed the law for the whole country, they were in Virginia
Right.
when they got married, and
Right.
they got in a whole heap of trouble
Right.
and ended up being a Supreme Court case. So
Yes. Yeah.
Fortunately, we won the case. The right side won.
Right.
But, yeah, my parents lived we lived in Northeast D.C. in Riggs
Okay.
Park.
Okay.
But my mom left when I was 3, and my dad raised us.
Okay.
He told her, you can do whatever you want, but the kids stay with me.
Wow.
So my dad was just outstanding father, and he raised me and my brother. My stepmother joined us when I was about 7.
Okay.
And, so
Where'd you go to elementary school?
I went to LaSalle Elementary right there in Riggs Park, and it was kind of tough on me. And then, boy, middle school, Bertie Bacchus Junior High. Love the school, but have some bad memories from part of it.
And what are the bad memories?
Well, you know what it's like, Rock. You grow up in an all-black neighborhood, and especially back then,
Right.
as light as I am,
Sure.
I was getting my butt whipped. I mean, and I was real skinny too. I was
Little tiny thing.
tiny thing, getting picked on.
Yeah.
But anyway, it made me tough. And by the time I went to high school, I ended up going to high school, the same school my dad taught at. So for the first year, which is High Point High School,
Right.
the first year we still lived in D.C. So we had to pay for me to go the first year
Right.
because it was out of the region.
Sure.
But after that, we moved to Prince George's County, and I was able to just continue to go to High Point.
I tell you what, interesting background. Let's go back as to if I can tap into what your first memory or first couple of memories were as a child.
Oh, man. I actually can remember my first steps. And no one wants to believe it, but it is absolutely true. Because my dad was on the phone, had a really long cord.
Yeah.
And I got up and took a couple of steps, and he said, wait a minute, Jolene's walking. And then I fell on my butt. And
Wow.
that was it. So I do remember that. And then it was a big blank
are we
for a while.
are we to be impressed that you have a memory that goes back to 2 years old, or you didn't start walking until you were 8?
I know. I wasn't 2 either. I think I was about a year.
Wow, that is
So I remember
fascinating.
that, and I have a lot of great memories about my grandmother who moved in with us for a while when my mom moved out. And, my grandma and I were real tight. She was really, really fun. She was a party woman. She wasn't your traditional, cook-all-day grandma. She was fun. So we had a ball together, and, I was very sad when she passed. I was about 10.
So your mom left when you were 3, so obviously, your dad was a very strong,
Right.
impressive, and stabilizing influence.
Yeah, but you know what? This is what gets me. When a woman ends up being a single mom, the man leaves her, everybody just says, oh man, that's too bad.
Yeah.
If it happens the other way,
Yeah.
everybody's like, oh, he's a saint.
Uh-huh.
He's a
Yeah.
wonderful person.
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
they're all the women
Yeah.
in the neighborhood
Yeah.
bringing over casseroles.
Yes.
So,
Yes, indeed.
so I can't say that it was harder on him than it would have been on my mother if it had been the other way around.
Right.
So.
When we come back, I want to ask before we go to other phases of your life, who were some of your really most profound influences at an early age, other than your father, perhaps, and your grandmother? We'll come to that when we come back on the Rock Newman Show here at Busboys and Poets in the Langston Hughes Room. Come on down and join us. We'll see you in a minute when we get back.
This is Leprechaun Tim Pohanka from Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai. It's hard to be down on your luck when you're Virginia's first choice for new Nissan and Hyundais, but I need to sell 60 cars this week. Right now, I'll pay you big bucks for your good luck. Bring down any good luck charm you've gotten based on the sale price of the car you choose. I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car this week. Today, your lucky penny is worth plenty, up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car you want. Stop moping and hoping you'll get approved. With my For the People credit approval process, the banks are looking to get lucky and lend to you, even if you've been turned down before. Bring me any good luck charm and I'll give you up to $4,777 off any nicer, newer car today. Hurry, once I get rid of 60 cars, the luck runs out. All offers require bank approval, so call us at 1-800-POHANKA, visit Pohanka Nissan and Pohanka Hyundai on Route 1 in Fredericksburg, or better yet, log on to timpohankaforthepeople.com. And when we make a deal, I promise it'll be your lucky day. I'm Tim Pohanka, and I'm a leprechaun for the people.
Hello to all my friends in the DMV. I am Rock Newman from the Rock Newman Show. I want to tell you about the MGM Grand National Harbor, the most exciting project to come to the District, Maryland, or Virginia in quite some time. You're going to have great fun. Come on down, support this project with all you have. It is going to be wonderful for the area. We're going to increase our tax base. We're going to get funding for the police department, for ambulance, for fire, for education. It is really a project that is going to benefit our area. Folks, we want to support in a very strong DMV kind of way this great project from the MGM Grand National Harbor.
My baby drives a Pohanka.
The weekend is here, and no matter what the weather's like outside, you'll find the deals inside here in the beautiful showroom of the all-new Pohanka Hyundai in Capitol Heights during their giant Markdown Madness sale.
Smart shoppers know that every new Hyundai in Pohanka comes with Hyundai Assurance and America's best 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. But why don't you tell them about the Markdown sale, Joe?
I'll be happy to, Kim. Folks, shop around on the web, and you'll see lease payments on a new 2013 Elantra GLS at $179 a month. Today at Pohanka Hyundai, $99 a month. That's right, a $99 payment on a brand new Elantra. Pohanka.
And $89 a month on a new 2013 Accent GLS Automatic. How do they do it, Joe?
It must be the volume, Kim. A brand new building, hundreds of new Hyundais, and Pohanka's low payment and easy credit programs are designed to get everybody driving. But you have to get here today. Rush to the giant Markdown Madness sale at exit 13 off the Capitol Beltway.
Pohanka Hyundai, king of the Beltway. All financing for a limited term on approved HMF credit.
My baby drives a Pohanka.
And now, the Rock Newman Show.
Folks, welcome back to the Rock Newman Show. We are at Busboys and Poets, 14th and V Street, Northwest Washington, D.C. We're broadcasting from the Langston Hughes Room. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Tell all your friends what a great show we have, and tell them to tune us in at check us out on the web at rocknewmanshow.com. Later tonight, we're going to have a rebroadcast, as we always do, on 1480 AM in the D.C., Maryland, and Virginia area. My guest is Jolene Ivey. In the second hour, we have just legal scholar extraordinaire Barbara Onwine, president of and executive director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, and someone you all know, Reverend Jesse Jackson. He's calling to weigh in on the controversy surrounding the name of Washington's football team. And in the third hour, we have Laura. That is Kelly Jackson Williams, the actress from the sitcom Family Matters. Urkel's the love of Urkel's life. Tell us on Facebook. Check me out. It's rocknewmanshow.com or my personal page. Doesn't matter, Rock Newman. What's your favorite show of Family Matters? But what matters right now is that we're with Jolene Ivey. Jolene, before we went to break, we got a little biographical information about you. And we left off where, obviously, the incredibly strong and steady influence of your father. Your grandmother, you said, was an influence also, and she brought some joy in your life. What I was wondering is, did you have a particular idol outside of your father and grandmother, a teacher, a public figure, whatever it might have been? Who had an impact on your life early on?
You know, it's going to sound corny, okay?
That's okay.
But it was Martin Luther King. And
that doesn't sound corny at all.
well, I was so...
Because we all have a dream.
Right, right. And, you know, he was such a point of discussion in my family.
Yeah.
And when he was killed, there was a local television station came to our school to interview kids about how they felt.
This was now maybe when you were in junior high.
No.
Oh,
I'm
in
talking
elementary.
at the time it happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was just a little kid, and I remember this local television station came out to interview kids about what was his impact on our lives.
Right.
And I know that when they saw me sitting in that class, they were like, "What the heck's this little white-looking girl doing in this class?" But
Right.
they interviewed me,
Uh-huh.
and I came home and I told my family, I'm going to be on television tonight.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so when it was time for it to come on and I went and turned on the TV, they were like, what's she watching? And they came, and sure enough, there I was. And they asked me what his impact had been on me. And I said, he got us a seat on the bus.
Go on now.
Yeah. And so I remember that. And
Yeah.
I remember when he was killed. I remember being with my grandmother was not living with us anymore. She was living on 16th Street downtown.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually with her. And, you know, because I would go over and spend the night and
Sure.
stuff. And my dad came to get me. You know, the whole city was on lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
And that you were told that you couldn't come out. But my
Yes.
dad came down to 16th Street. He said, they said you couldn't come out unless it was an emergency, but my baby's down here. This is an emergency. And he picked me up and took me home. And I remember the ride home,
Yeah.
seeing all the tanks in the street.
Yeah.
It was really scary.
Yeah.
And where we lived, there were no tanks, but you were supposed to stay inside. You weren't supposed to come out. And I do remember my dad did let me and my brother go out, but he said that if we saw any helicopters to hide. So that's what we did.
What time?
Oh, it was crazy.
What times?
It
man.
was crazy.
You know, and I'm certainly, you know, several years older, just a few years older. I just look a whole lot older. But, you know, I remember the Russian missile crisis, you know, when Kennedy, shortly after Kennedy came into power, and, you know, things I think that kids don't even think about these days necessarily, at least here in the United States. But I remember having ridden my bike out of my yard one time after my mother told me to stay there, and I heard these sirens going off, and I was near a satellite Air Force base from Andrews Air Force Base, and I thought the Russians were coming because in school we had practiced those what do you call
the drills?
Those drills where you got under your desk in case there was a bomb or something like that. So, very, very interesting times.
We wonder what our children will remember from our times now.
Sure. Yeah. What are the sort of the signature events? I'm sure 9/11 would have
Absolutely.
to be one. Yeah. Okay, so that takes us sort of through junior high school. You went to high school. How were those years?
High school was better. I went to a high school that had both black and white kids. Not too many Latinos there then, although at this point the school has turned over again, and it's primarily Latino. But at that point, that just made me happy because I blended in. So I was no longer a target. I wasn't an obvious target. And I loved my high school. High Point High School, had a great time, very involved with the theater department. And actually, I was also on the rifle team. I was a sharpshooter.
All right.
My dad was the coach for the rifle team because, he'd been a military guy. Right. And it's so funny looking back because, of course, we didn't have a shooting range at my high school, but they did have one at Bladensburg High School, which is near where I live now.
Sure.
And we would drive out to Bladensburg High School every week for target practice. And just to think that just back then, I mean, it really wasn't, that long ago, that there was a shooting range in the basement of a high school.
In the high school?
In the high school. It was in the basement. And that high school, the physical plant has been raised and a new high school has been built, still called Bladensburg High School, but there's no shooting range in it.
No, not anymore.
Not anymore.
Not in this day and time.
No.
Okay, please tell me. So then high school and then
I went
what?
to Towson University.
Okay.
I really, really wanted to go to Columbia University. Was kind of my dream.
Yeah.
But my dad drove me up to Towson, and he said, and this is where you'll be going to school. He said, you can apply anywhere you want. But this is where you're going.
But this is where you're going to go.
Which actually turned out great for me because there's a television station, Channel 2, WMAR, just a mile or so down the road. And because of its close proximity, I was able to get great experience there while I was still in school. And therefore ended up getting jobs in television. So it worked out for me. But, at the time I was a little irritated that my dad wouldn't. I'd worked so hard in high school. I got great grades. There was no reason for me not to at least apply to Columbia.
Yeah.
But our oldest son ended up going to Columbia and graduating from there. That made me feel good.
Okay, so you kind of lived a little vicariously
I
through
did.
him.
I
did. Your father was practicing the golden rule.
Well.
he who has the gold rules in that particular case.
And so he did.
Good deal. So you went there. You went to Towson. You got into television at the station there in Baltimore, WMAR.
Yeah, it wasn't kind of a seamless transition because my first job that I could get, and I graduated, I'll have to brag a little bit, a semester early.
Okay.
I'd been so worried the whole time I was in school because I did not want to waste my dad's money.
Yeah.
And I saw other kids who would seem to be on the 5, 6, 7 year plan.
Yeah.
And I knew that was not going to happen with Joe Stevenson. So I was taking 18 credits a semester to make sure that I didn't fall behind.
Sure.
And I looked around and realized I could graduate early. So
Wow.
I went ahead and graduated. But the only job I could get at that time, because it was serious recession at that time too, it was
Yes.
1982, December when I graduated. And I ended up working for the government, federal government, GS2, part-time job, really miserable job. But the great thing is that because it was part-time, I was able to volunteer for a television show in Baltimore.
Sure.
So I would drag my butt out of bed every morning in the dark and the cold and promise myself if I could just get to work early enough, I could leave early enough to drive to Baltimore to work on this show. So, and that I was promising myself I was going to come home and be in bed by 9 o'clock, which I never ever did. But it's the way I got myself motivated. And being able to have that opportunity to volunteer on the show, it was called Say Baltimore. And it aired on Channel 2 sporadically. And then it got moved to Channel 67. And it was on live every day. And I was on the air for that show, and until it just crashed and burned. There was a problem with the ownership, I believe. I came into work one day, and the secretary looked at me and she said, "What are you doing here?"
So having a background, a journalistic background, a journalism background, that would seem to be something that would prepare you for public service. Now, I know that you later on went to the University of Maryland and got a master's in communications, right? Journalism, yeah. And you were the press secretary for Ben Carton for several years.
Right.
Now, was it your work with what is now Senator Carton? Yeah, Ben Carton. Was it your work with him that whet your appetite for politics?
You know, I love Senator Carton, and he is the best boss I've ever had, and I will say that up front.
Right.
But the person that whet my appetite for politics was your guest coming up later, Jesse Jackson.
Tell me about that.
I volunteered in his D.C. office the first time he ran.
1984.
Yeah, he would not remember me, I am sure. But I would come in and answer phones. I'd come in on weekends if they needed somebody to run out and get coffee. I remember they asked me to run out and get him hot chocolate one time. There was nothing open in D.C., but I was determined. I was finding this man some hot chocolate, and I did it.
Yeah.
But so I was a very low-level volunteer, but I loved doing it. And it was so exciting to be a part of it. And people kept saying, well, what does Jesse want? And I was like, he wants to be president.
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
right,
why is this such a shock? And he was doing great. So I did that until I got, jobs that made it impossible for me to continue to do it. But I loved it.
Okay. Did you get involved in the 88 campaign? Because
I couldn't at that point. Yeah, at that point I was working for Ben Carton.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you worked for Ben Carton for 10 years?
No. Just a couple of years.
Okay.
Yeah, I worked for him for a couple of years, and then I was pregnant with our first child. Glenn and I had gotten married in 88. And about a year and a couple of months after we got married, we had our first son. So at that point, I did not return to the office on a full-time basis. I did keep a small part of the job for a little while for this program that Ben Carton and Kwesi Mfume were doing together called Operation Understanding.
Yeah.
It's the same program that Bill Gray had done in Philadelphia, where they get 6 black and 6 Jewish high school juniors, and they train them for the school year and teach them about their cultures, and then take them on a 2-week trip, 2 weeks to Senegal, 2 weeks to Israel.
Yeah.
And then they come back and do speaking engagements for their senior year of high school. So I was the executive director of that.
Okay.
And I
you just mentioned a name. It is someone that I've had long-term admiration for, Kwesi Mfume.
Don't you love him?
That man, I'm telling you, in terms of having been a public servant, someone who just seemed to always be on point, always straight. What an impressive individual.
May I tell you my favorite Kwesi Mfume moment?
Please do, because I love the man.
Yes, when he was ending his time as chair of the Black Caucus.
Yes.
I came to the dinner with my husband. At that time, I'd been home with my kids for a number of years. I was not working in the workforce. And everybody else around me, they were all big, important people. And when you're a stay-at-home mom, you are not a big, important person.
Except for you're the most important person in the world.
Yeah. People will say that to you, but they don't want to talk to you at the cocktail party.
Sure, right. Gotcha. I understand.
So everybody's kind of blowing me off. And Kwesi walks in, and he knew me from when I worked for Ben.
Right.
And he is the man of the hour.
Yes.
And he walks in, and he kind of sweeps everybody away and says, Jolene. And he gives me this big hug, and I'm trying to be nice and introduce him around the circle. And he was just polite, like, yes, hello.
Yeah.
But Jolene.
Yeah.
And I was like, I would do anything for that man just based on that moment.
Yeah,
you know
sure,
what I mean?
I understand.
And when he walked away, everybody looked at me like, dang, girl.
You got girlfriend got it going on.
And there was a moment, actually very recently, before Doug Gansler announced his choice for lieutenant governor, that Kwesi's name was out there as a possibility.
Sure.
For whatever reasons, they did not work things out, so here I am.
There you are.
But when I heard that that was a possibility, I sent a text to Kwesi right away saying, congratulations, with
Yeah.
you all the way. We'll do
Yeah.
all I can for you.
Yeah.
Because I think he's a rock star.
And you know something, Jolene, I'm going to say this, that it is that kind of pathos and empathy and humility, I think, that truly makes one a good public servant. You know, the way what this country just went through from its political leaders.
Let's make sure we just put it on Boehner and the Tea Party,
Well, let me
please.
tell you something.
I can't even blame the rest of the Republicans.
Let me tell you how fast I was going there. And if anybody reads my Facebook posts, I say things there that I won't say over these airways. But what I was going to say is, you know, you'd like to have at least the fantasy that politicians are truly public servants. But the way that wrong side, I won't even say the right, the wrong side behaved is it takes away that innocence that your politicians are public servants, or at least some of them. But that kind of humility that you showed, where as a politician yourself who might, if you've gotten chosen now, they didn't just start thinking about you. They started thinking about Doug, and his team started to think about you much earlier. But to call and congratulate Kwesi shows the kind of humility, I think, that, you know, will serve the public well as a public servant. We're going to come back. We've got one more segment. Time is going so fast. We're going to talk all about what the Gansler-Ivey ticket is going to be about, what you see as the big challenges, what your hopes and dreams are for your campaign and for the state of Maryland. When we come back on the Rock Newman Show at Busboys and Poets, 14th and V Street, Northwest Washington, D.C. We got great food and great conversation. Come on down and join us.
My baby drives a bull handcuff.
The weekend is here, and no matter what the weather's like outside, you'll find the deals inside here in the beautiful showroom of the all-new Pohanka Hyundai in Capitol Heights during their giant Markdown Madness sale.
Smart shoppers know that every new Hyundai in Pohanka comes with Hyundai Assurance and America's best 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. But why don't you tell them about the markdown sale, Joe?
I'll be happy to, Kim. Folks, shop around on the web, and you'll see lease payments on a new 2013 Elantra GLS at $179 a month. Today at Pohanka Hyundai, $99 a month. That's right, a $99 payment on a brand new Elantra.
And $89 a month on a new 2013 Accent GLS Automatic. How do they do it, Joe?
It must be the volume, Kim. A brand new building, hundreds of new Hyundais, and Pohanka's low payment and easy credit programs are designed to get everybody driving. But you have to get here today. Rush to the giant Markdown Madness sale at exit 13 off the Capitol Beltway.
Pohanka Hyundai, king of the Beltway. All financing for a limited term on approved HMF credit.
My baby drives a bull handcuff.
Hello, everybody. I'm Rock Newman from The Rock Newman Show. And I am absolutely flattered to have as one of my fine advertisers the DMV's greatest corporate citizen. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about the Pohanka Automotive Group. If you have any automotive needs whatsoever, if you want to sell your car, buy a car, trade in your car, have your car serviced, whatever you need, see my good friends at the Pohanka Automotive Group. You will be well taken care of, I promise. I'm Rock Newman. I might be there. Come on down and see our good friends at Pohanka Automotive Group.
My baby drives a pro handcuff.
The weekend is here, and no matter what the weather's like outside, you'll find the deals inside here in the beautiful showroom of the all-new Pohanka Hyundai in Capitol Heights during their giant Markdown Madness sale.
Smart shoppers know that every new Hyundai in Pohanka comes with Hyundai Assurance and America's best 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. But why don't you tell them about the markdown sale, Joe?
I'll be happy to, Kim. Folks, shop around on the web, and you'll see lease payments on a new 2013 Elantra GLS at $179 a month. Today at Pohanka Hyundai, $99 a month. That's right, a $99 payment on a brand new Elantra.
And $89 a month on a new 2013 Accent GLS Automatic. How do they do it, Joe?
It must be the volume, Kim. A brand new building, hundreds of new Hyundais, and Pohanka's low payment and easy credit programs are designed to get everybody driving. But you have to get here today. Rush to the giant Markdown Madness sale at exit 13 off the Capitol Beltway.
All right.
Pohanka Hyundai, king of the Beltway. All financing for a limited term on approved HMF credit.
My baby drives a pro handcuff.
And now, the Rock Newman Show.
Welcome back, folks. I am Rock Newman. My guest this hour is Maryland State Delegate Jolene Ivey, and she has been tapped to run for the lieutenant governor position on the Doug Gansler ticket. Doug Gansler, as you know, is a former state's attorney. He was out of Montgomery County. He was Montgomery County state's attorney.
And now he's the Attorney General.
Now he's the Attorney General for the state of Maryland, and he is running against a ticket that is headed up by Anthony Brown, who is the Lieutenant Governor currently to O'Malley in Maryland. So you guys are going to be, in essence, kind of running against a semi-incumbent, if you will, not
right.
the governor, but the lieutenant governor. Jolene, I'd like for you to answer the question first, please. As a delegate, you've been delegate for 6 years?
Seven.
It's almost for 7 years.
Right.
Why do you think, well, look, there's an elephant in the room. Let's deal with that elephant. We've talked a little bit about black, white, race, and that sort of thing. The elephant in the room is Anthony Brown, the lieutenant governor, is a black man. And he would certainly be, if he were elected, he would be the first black governor of Maryland. And the conventional wisdom is that Doug Gansler, it was critically important because of the population in Maryland, and especially in the high voting districts, Prince George's County and the surrounding areas. It was pretty critical for him to get someone either that was black or certainly would appeal to the black voters. Agree with that? Or?
I would agree with that.
Okay, because those are political realities, if you will. Right.
And I think the important thing to know, too, is that Doug Gansler has always been great about having women and minorities in his office. Mm-hmm. So he has always kept people around him with a diversity of opinion and a diversity of experiences. So he knows that it's important for him to be able to make good decisions, to have lots of different viewpoints around him. And part of that is having black people in his office. So it was also a natural extension for him to do so.
You know something? I'm certainly having you on. I've extended an invitation for Doug Gansler to come on. I'm certainly going to extend an invitation for Anthony Brown to come on, and I will, ask him just candid questions like I am asking you. But as I've done as I've canvassed a little bit amongst folks that I know that are influential in the Maryland scene, a lot of people don't seem to feel that Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown has really connected with Marylanders, especially, as an African American, especially maybe that he hasn't connected with African Americans. I'll ask him about that when he comes on. What I want to ask you, a very direct question, would be why, for the state of Maryland, is Doug Gansler and your ticket would be a better ticket to serve the people of Maryland than Anthony Brown? And has he selected a running mate yet?
He has. His running mate is the Howard County executive.
Okay.
Yeah.
So why would Doug Gansler, Jolene Ivey ticket be better than the Anthony Brown,
Ken Ullman,
the other guy ticket?
Right. Well, the basic difference between Doug and me and Anthony is that Doug and I are doers. Okay, we will push the envelope. We will try new things. We talk to a lot of people, and we get things done. And we haven't seen that same sense of urgency from the lieutenant governor. Now, I always think of it this way: past is prologue. So your record, what you've done in the past, informs how you're going to behave and operate in the future.
That makes a lot of sense.
I think if you look at how I've behaved and how Doug Gansler has behaved, we've been out there working our butts off. And for our constituents, for our people, I was elected by my colleagues to chair the Prince George's County delegation, not because I like to sit around and have coffee with people, but because they know I'm going to fight for my county. I'm going to push people. I will push my friends. If I think they're doing the wrong thing, I will confront them and say, look, this is what we need to do, and try to bring them along to our way. So we don't always do what, we don't try to stay under the radar screen. We're not trying to not make waves. We think it's important to make waves. Now, one thing that's a real concern is the achievement gap. And although we keep hearing over and over, Maryland has the #1 school system. Well, if you're from Prince George's County or you're from Baltimore City, you might get kind of irritated to hear that Maryland has the #1 school system, because our kids have a serious achievement gap.
Well, let me just say on that particular point, I was going to get to education. I kind of want to stay with the political just for a moment, but just I got to pick up on that. I can't tell you how many families that I know that live in Prince George's County that are doing everything they can, hook and crook, to get some of their kids who are in school to be schooled in other counties. So indeed, there is an achievement gap there. Why is that?
Well, we just need to put more resources in the younger kids.
Yeah.
So a lot of children are coming from very difficult backgrounds, and maybe their parents have not spent time reading to them when they were a baby, and therefore by the time they get to school, they're behind. And then the attention that the teachers have to give is to bring those kids up, and the kids who are already on level are not getting the same attention they need to succeed, to go forward. So it's been a problem. We need to have more money, more resources going to the younger kids. That's going to make a big difference. That's something that Doug Gansler and I want to do, and there are ways to do it. We just passed the casino gambling, and I supported that for the jobs and for the money that we need. And so
I'm glad you did. They're one of my sponsors. The MGM Grand National Harbor is one of my sponsors, and they're great folks over there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I was just disturbed recently. I was in a hearing where we're hearing, wow, we're getting a ton of money out of the casinos. But instead of having more money being put into schools, they're just diverting the money to someplace else. So it's just kind of frustrating. The governor has a lot of power in Maryland, and it's important to have someone in that position who's not just going to make a history, but make a difference.
Okay.
And I know I do both. I make history because if I'm elected, I'll be the first Democratic African-American woman lieutenant governor in our nation's history.
Yeah, and that is history. That would be making
That is
history.
history.
Let me ask you, because there was some controversy. I put my shoulder to the wheel. I believed that gaming at National Harbor would be not just a good thing, but a great thing for the county and for the region, for the state.
Absolutely.
I just, when you strip it all away, and you talk about the impact, the jobs, and all the rest, and, folks got into the issue of morality, and it was like, look, okay, let's talk about this morality issue for a second. If you will, they're going to gamble here, or they're going to go into another county and gamble. I mean, you're not going to stop people. You're not going to legislate morality. So why don't we craft a package? And I'm somewhat aware that there is a phenomenal package. You, the county, the state, you guys have done a good job in saying and crafting a relationship with MGM where the county, the region, the state dramatically benefits. I want to ask you as an elected official, why you supported the MGM Grand opening at National Harbor. What were your reasons for doing that? Because there was some resistance.
Well, also keep in mind that there are 2 other locations still in play for the casino. I support the National Harbor location. It's clearly the best one. It's where you're going to be able to do a ton of economic development right there. It's a perfect location. It's draws Virginia.
Sure.
It's great. But when it comes to morals, I think it's immoral to keep people from having a job.
Yeah.
And the people I represent a lot of people in difficult circumstances who need work. And I want to make sure that we get them work. And a lot of these jobs are also going to be good union jobs, which I support.
So with the MGM, in terms of its construction, once it is up and beyond.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So people who may not have graduated from college will still be able to work, and they'll be able to do all kinds of things. And people who have graduated from college can also get jobs. So there's a range of jobs. I think that people only think of the actual dealing type jobs, but there are a lot of jobs associated with a big project like this.
Yeah.
Everything from accounting to...
In the spirit of full disclosure, I already said MGM Grand was a sponsor of this show. We're very careful about who we do business with this show. Because one thing, if I have a reputation for, it's of speaking just very, very candidly.
Yeah, me too.
And if the MGM, if I didn't know the MGM had, and its reputation for being a good corporate partner, for its reputation of being one of the most culturally diverse businesses in the country, it really mattered. Those kind of things matter to us, and I'm proud that they are a sponsor, and I'm really happy that this region that I grew up in Prince George's County, I grew up in Brandywine, Maryland, to see this kind of mega resort come to our shores is something that is very special, and I'm really happy that you supported that. I think it was a wise decision across the board.
Yeah, I agree it was wise. It wasn't always popular.
Yeah,
I certainly
but that's what leaders do.
Right.
Leaders do the best thing. That's right.
Leaders lead, and
That's right.
and I haven't really heard anything from the other campaign on that issue.
Now, I've not had much formal training as a talk show host, but I'm a good listener. And I heard you say something earlier, and it came out of just your beauty and your sweetness and all of that, but it was a tough one. You said we would be better. The Gansler Ivey ticket, we would be better because we are doers.
Right.
Now, I heard that, and
it's true.
And that's a proactive statement. I think, though, in fairness, that it's a statement that also challenges that perhaps Lieutenant Governor Brown has not. When you say I'm a doer, well, you left it out that perhaps that there's not. So is there that criticism? Do you find that criticism of him? You think that's a valid criticism that as Lieutenant Governor he hadn't done enough?
Absolutely. And I've heard it from his own supporters. Some of the people who are supporting him, they're just supporting him because they think that he can win, so they just want to be on board, and so they did that. But they're concerned because he hasn't been doing anything. He's been totally under the radar screen. He hasn't been in Prince George's County. Maybe he's taking us for granted and thinking that he needs to be someplace else. But when I've asked around the state, he hasn't been there either.
Well, see, and that's something that I want to get to. That the thought that either because you're African American, or even, for example, because you're Democrat, that no voter should ever be taken for granted. And if, in fact, and look, when you look at political calculations, one thing Doug Gansler is doing is he is making sure that he doesn't take the African American vote for granted.
Oh, not at all.
If he were doing that, you wouldn't be the running mate.
You got that right.
So now, there is clearly established by him in terms of that political consideration that he's giving the ultimate consideration to the African American community by selecting an African American opponent. Now, on the other hand, on the flip side, I mean, as an African American running mate,
right.
On the flip side, the criticism that I have heard, and I asked the question in a very objective way, not taking sides yet.
Right.
But I asked it in a very objective way. And more of what I heard is that Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown is taking us for granted, and damn it, we don't like it.
No, people
now,
don't
when
like
he comes
that at
here,
all.
I'm going to talk to him about it.
Well, that's good. That's good. I hope you do talk to him about it. But Doug Gansler has certainly been a person who has promoted the things that we need in our community. So when it comes to education, he calls the achievement gap a moral stain. I haven't heard Anthony Brown say anything about the achievement gap.
Yeah.
In fact, the only thing I've heard him say at all about policy in the last, since May when he announced, was that he supports pre-K. And that's about it. And we'd already come out for pre-K. Mm-hmm. So, and Doug Gansler wants to direct more money to underprivileged kids to make sure that they get that pre-K experience. They're the ones who benefit the most. That's where we get the most bang for our buck. But Anthony Brown hasn't come out for anything. All he does is roll out endorsements and do dirty tricks, and that's about it. So that's all you got.
And when you say roll out endorsements, right now, just again, looking
Right.
at the landscape, I did see that it appears as if the more established political figures in the state are lining up behind Anthony Brown.
Well, you know, the governor is a very powerful person in Maryland, as I said earlier.
Sure.
And our governor has strongly supported his lieutenant governor. He wants to be able to say, you know, his guy is going to carry on his legacy.
Right. And so that machine sort of just falls in place.
Yep. And Doug Gansler and I, we are not part of the machine.
You know, I see this as going to be a very interesting race. There's a, you know, 1 day, 1 hour in politics is a long time.
Right.
And you guys have what?
A bunch of hours.
Yeah. You got
June 24th.
Yeah. June 24th?
June 24th, 2014 is the primary.
Okay. So you guys have eight solid months or so.
Long enough to have a baby.
This is going to be a tough campaign, and I'd love to have you back as the campaign, as the election day draws near. And of course, I want to have Doug on, and we'll give the other side equal time also. But I see this as being a fight. A lot of people have sort of ordained that Anthony Brown was going to be a shoo-in. I think with a fighter like yourself and with Doug, I think it's going to be a tough campaign. I wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us at the Rock Newman Show. Folks, we will be back after these brief messages with legal scholar, civil rights extraordinaire individual Barbara Unwine. She is responsible for a lot of the rights you enjoy today. We trace it right back to her incredible efforts over a brilliant career. Back at 10 o'clock. In the 10 o'clock hour also, we'll be having the Right Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson talking about the controversy surrounding the Washington football team's racist nickname. In a moment, the Rock Newman Show.